So Chichester Psalms, it was a commission by Reverend Walter Hussey for Chichester Cathedral and the choir there. And I think for Bernstein, it was an opportunity to really experiment further with the idea of integrating all different faiths, so that we have text that's in Hebrew alongside kind of jazz rhythms, and a boy soprano is featured, representing, I think, innocence of youth and hope for the future. While it's a short piece, it's extremely impactful in its message of unity, and that our similarities are far more than our dissimilarities. I'm hoping that by putting together the Chichester Psalms by Bernstein with this huge multimedia project that uses Shostakovich's 10th Symphony, that we can bring in people who may not come just for the music, but will be inspired not only by the music, but by the visual stimulation of this artist's approach. I think this program, with its diversity and its different dimensions of experience, the visual, the oral, having choir, having orchestra, all of these different elements, I think it fits in beautifully to the Southbank Centre's Festival of Orchestras and the theme of multitudes.